Hi, welcome back to God Aware. For the past week or so, I've just kind of been thinking over a story that in the Bible that came back to me, but I was really surprised that I hadn't thought about it in that way. And in John chapter 6, Jesus was talking to the crowds and his disciples, and he ended up saying, if you don't eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, you have no part with me. And then it said many left him, and he turned to the disciples, are you going to leave too? And so he said this phrase, if you don't eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, you have no part with me. And he didn't explain it. And so a lot of the disciples said, this is a hard thing to understand. Who can receive this? Because he's talking about eating my flesh, drinking my blood, and Jesus, he didn't explain it. He didn't go into detail at that time, at least that we see in the Bible. And it wasn't until the Last Supper, maybe 18 months, 2 years later, that him and the disciples are sitting at, in the upper room or at this table, and then he goes into explains and gives, the communion, the bread and the wine. And so the disciples really had a 2-year span where they had this hard word from God, this confusing word for them. And they just had to go on faith and I don't understand it, but I'm following anyway. And it wasn't until 2 years later that they got the revelation, the explanation of, oh, yeah, 2 years ago you said this. Now I get it. Now I understand what you mean. And I really felt the Lord saying today that there's many of us that you've been holding on to a hard word. You've been holding on to a confusing word. That God has said something to you in the past or maybe recently, and you can't comprehend it. You don't understand it. Some people I've called you as a prophet into the nations. God, I'm sitting in my living room. What does that mean? What does that even look like? And I really feel there's many of us that God has spoken to you a word, and you're kind of lost. You're like, God, you said this. I can't see it. Or he spoke a word that you're just confused about. God, you said this. I don't understand it at this time. And I really think that the Father is saying this story is of the disciples holding on to this word, this teaching that Jesus gave for 2 years, not comprehending, but we don't understand it, but we're all in, we're following you anyway. And I really believe the Father is saying, hold on in the mystery. Hold on to me in the mystery. I may not explain it yet, but I need you to hold on to me, even in the mystery of things that you don't understand. And there's a story also of somebody that went to Mother Teresa, and I'm with Mother Teresa. I should ask her to pray for me, to pray over me. And the only thing he could think of was will you pray for me to have understanding? And the way the story goes, Mother Teresa said, no, I won't pray for understanding. In all my years, I rarely had understanding. What I had was trust. I will pray for you to have trust. And this is where faith comes in, that, so many of us, we love the idea of faith. We're all on board. Yes, we're people of faith. We walk by faith. We love the idea of faith until we actually have to use it. Until we actually get put in a situation where, I actually have to walk by faith. I actually have to believe something that I don't see yet. Faith is the evidence of things hoped for. It's if you're hoping for it, technically there's no evidence for it yet. It's a hope. So it's in the ether. It's evidence of something hoped for. Well, there is no evidence of something hoped for. It's all faith. The evidence of things hoped for and the substance of things unseen. If it's unseen, there's no substance. You can't see it. It doesn't have a substance. So faith is this trust and this belief that, I don't see God. I don't feel God in the moment. I know he spoke this to me. I'm just going to have to trust. I'm going to have to hold on to a word that I don't understand. I'm going to have to hold on to faith. So let's go ahead and pray. Father, I just thank you that you've given us faith, that you've given us this trust. I just pray for those that they're holding on to a word that they don't understand yet. Father, may you just impart a faith to them, a trust to them, to know like this is the faith. This is what you've called them to hold on to something that's not tangible yet, to believe in something that they can't see yet, that you have called them to this faith. Help us to press on and just to hold on even when we don't understand. Father, help us to hold on in the mystery. Well, thank you for watching. Until next time, God bless.